Chosen one, take a breath and let these words settle into you, because what you are hearing right now is not hype, not imagination, not a temporary emotional lift. It is recognition. It is confirmation. It is the moment you look back at everything you survived and finally understand why it had to be that hard, why it had to last that long, and why it felt like nobody could see what you were carrying. Congratulations, it's done. The chapter that tried to break you has closed. And no matter how loudly fear tries to knock, it does not have permission to live there anymore. There was a season when your life felt like a continuous test with no explanation. You were strong before you were wanted to be. You learned endurance before you learned ease. You carried responsibilities, pain, expectations, and disappointments that were never meant to be permanent, but they stayed long enough to shape you. There were nights you questioned your worth. Mornings you woke up already tired. And moments where you wondered if the struggle was somehow a punishment. But it wasn't. It was preparation. And now, that preparation has reached its completion. What you endured taught you discernment. It taught you when to speak and when to stay silent. It taught you the difference between people who clap for you and people who pray for you. It taught you that not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay, and not every loss is a failure. Some losses are releases. Some endings are protection. Some doors close not to limit you, but to keep you from bleeding where you no longer belong. There was a time you thought you would have to carry that weight forever. You learned to function while hurting, to smile while depleted, to keep moving while emotionally exhausted. You became skilled at surviving storms no one else could even see. But hear this clearly now. Survival mode is not your permanent identity. You were not created just to endure. You were created to arrive. And arrival does not look like chaos. It looks like peace that no longer needs explanation. What's different now is not just what's happening around you, but what has shifted inside you. The old triggers don't hit the same. The old fears don't have the same grip. The old voices that once lived rent-free in your mind are getting quieter. You are no longer begging for clarity. You are walking with it. You are no longer asking for strength. You are standing in it. And the reason it feels unfamiliar is because you are stepping into a version of life you have never experienced before. This is the season where you stop reliving lessons you already passed. You don't have to go through that again. Not that heartbreak, not that humiliation, not that isolation, not that constant proving. You already paid the price. You already learned the lesson. Repetition is no longer required. The growth is complete. And now the reward begins to unfold in ways that don't announce themselves loudly, but steadily. You may notice that you no longer feel drawn to certain environments, conversations, or patterns that once felt normal. That's not you becoming distant. That's you becoming aligned. When your internal frequency changes, anything that cannot meet you there naturally fades. You are not losing anything of value. You are shedding what can no longer survive where you're going. There was a point when you had to trust without evidence. You had to keep going without reassurance. You had to believe while everything around you suggested otherwise. That kind of faith rewires a person. It builds a foundation that does not crack under pressure. And now that foundation is holding something new, something lighter, something real. Don't minimize what you survived just because you survived it. What you walked through would have crushed someone who wasn't built the way you are. The reason you felt targeted was because you were entrusted. The reason the pressure was intense was because the capacity inside you was greater. And now that capacity is no longer being tested, it is being used. You will notice that the peace arriving in your life doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal closure. You no longer need apologies you never received. You no longer need explanations that never came. You understand now that some people were assignments, not companions. Some situations were classrooms, not homes. And once the lesson is learned, a class ends. This is where you stop carrying guilt for outgrowing people who were comfortable with the old version of you. Growth will always offend those who benefit from your stagnation, but you are not responsible for staying small so others can feel secure. You are responsible for honoring what you've been called to become. Notice how your reactions have changed. Notice how you pause instead of panic, how you observe instead of explode, how you choose silence instead of chaos. That's not weakness, that's mastery. That's what happens when someone has been refined instead of ruined. The season ahead will not require you to fight the way you used to. Things will align with less force and more flow. Opportunities will come through doors you didn't have to kick down. Support will show up without you having to beg for it. And when challenges arise, because life still moves, you will meet them from a place of stability instead of survival. You are stepping into a life where rest is not laziness, joy is not suspicious, and peace is not temporary. You don't have to look over your shoulder the way you used to. You don't have to brace for impact every time something good happens. Pens. You are allowed to receive without punishment following it. There was a time when you thought being strong meant never feeling tired, never needing help, never slowing down. But true strength is knowing when the battle is over and having the wisdom to stop swinging. You don't need to rehearse pain to stay prepared. You don't need to relive trauma to stay humble. You've already earned your depth. Now is the season of integration, where everything you learned finally makes sense together. The patience, the discipline, the emotional intelligence, the resilience, the empathy. None of it was wasted. It is all being woven into a version of you that can hold more without breaking. You will attract different conversations now, different energy, different expectations. And that may feel lonely at first, because elevation always creates distance from what is familiar. But solitude at this level is not emptiness. It is space being made for what actually fits. There is relief in knowing you don't have to keep proving your worth through suffering. You don't have to earn love by overgiving. You don't have to stay in environments that require you to shrink to survive. You have already proven everything that needed to be proven. What comes next will feel quiet compared to what you've survived, and that quiet may feel strange. Don't confuse peace with boredom. Don't confuse stability with stagnation. This calm is not a pause. It is a foundation. You are allowed to enjoy where you are without waiting for something to go wrong. You are allowed to trust what is good without questioning how long it will last. You are allowed to move forward without dragging the past behind you as proof of humility. And as you continue to walk, you may still reflect on where you came from, but it will no longer pull you backward. It will simply remind you how far you've come, how much you've grown, and how much lighter you are now. That you are no longer carrying what was never meant to stay. The path ahead is not about proving yourself. It is about expressing yourself. It is not about surviving another storm. It is about building something that lasts. And even when moments of doubt try to whisper, you will recognize them as echoes, not instructions, remnants of an old season that no longer has authority over your steps. So stand where you are right now and recognize this moment for what it is. Not an ending, not a climax, not a finish line, but a release, a completion, a quiet, powerful shift where the weight lifts and the ground beneath you feels solid for the first time in a long time. And as you continue forward, the rhythm of your life begins to change. Not because everything around you is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting who you are becoming, and you are finally moving. Without the chains that once made every step feel like a battle, still unfolding inside you as the journey continues to open in ways you are only just beginning to recognize. And as you move through this unfolding, you will start to realize that the greatest shift is not what you have gained, but what no longer controls you. The fear that once dictated your decisions no longer gets the final word. The anxiety that used to wake you before the sun now fades before it can fully form. The heaviness that followed you like a shadow has loosened its grip. And even when memories surface, they no longer drag you under. They pass through like reminders, not threats. You are beginning to trust yourself in a deeper way. Not the surface level confidence that comes from applause or approval, but the quiet assurance that you can handle whatever comes next, because you have already handled worse. There is a steadiness in your voice now, even when you speak softly. There is clarity in your eyes that didn't come from ease, but from endurance. You have learned how to listen to your intuition without second guessing it, because you've seen what happens when you ignore it. There were moments when you felt delayed, when it seemed like everyone else was moving forward while you were stuck repeating the same lessons. But now you understand that timing is not punishment, it is precision. You are being shaped away from shortcuts, away from fragile foundation, away from success that would have collapsed under pressure. What you are stepping into now requires depth, patience, and discernment, and those are qualities you earned the hard way. You may notice that you no longer feel the urge to explain yourself to people who misunderstand you. You no longer feel compelled to defend your choices to those who are committed to seeing you through the lens of who you used to be. Silence has become a form of confidence. Distance has become a form of self-respect. And boundaries have become a form of love, not just for yourself, but for others who no longer need to be confused. By access they were never meant to have, there is a new relationship forming between you and your own mind. Where there was once constant noise, there is now space. Where there was once self-doubt, there is now self-trust. You don't spiral the way you used to. You don't catastrophize every pause or delay. You understand now that stillness is not stagnation, and rest is not regression. Sometimes growth looks like breathing without tension for the first time. You are no longer chasing closure from people who couldn't give it to you. You've learned how to close doors from the inside. You've learned that peace does not require agreement from everyone involved. It requires acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you are no longer letting it define the rest of your life. There's a softness returning to you that you thought you had lost, not weakness, but gentleness, the ability to feel without armor, the ability to hope without fear, the ability to love without bracing for impact. You guarded yourself because you had to. You were protecting something fragile while it was still forming. Now that it has strengthened, you don't need the same defenses. You can choose openness with wisdom instead of fear. You may also feel moments of grief for the version of you that didn't make it here, the one who was too tired, too overwhelmed, too misunderstood. Let that grief come. It is not sadness, it is honor. It is acknowledgement of how much it cost you to become who you are now. You don't have to rush past it. You don't have to minimize it. That version of you carried you as far as it could, and now you are carrying yourself forward. Your standards have changed. What you tolerate has shifted. What you accept as normal no longer includes chaos, inconsistency, or emotional confusion. You are no longer impressed by intensity without integrity. You are no longer drawn to potential without action. You have learned that consistency is more powerful than promises, and peace is more valuable than passion. That burns and destroys. As you step into new spaces, you will feel the difference immediately. The conversations will be different. The energy will be calmer. The expectations will be clearer. And you may feel out of place at first, not because you don't belong, but because you are adjusting to an environment where you are not required to struggle to be seen. Ease can feel unfamiliar when your nervous system has been trained for survival. Give yourself time to recalibrate. You are learning how to receive without guilt, compliments without deflection, support without suspicion, love without testing it. This is a skill you didn't need before because you were always the giver, the fixer, the strong one. Now you are allowing life to meet you halfway. You are allowing balance to exist. There's also a deep sense of purpose beginning to clarify, not in loud declarations, but in subtle alignment. You feel pulled toward things that nourish you instead of drain you. You feel curious instead of desperate, inspired instead of pressured. Purpose at this level is not about doing more. It is about doing what is true. You will still have days where old thoughts try to resurface. That does not mean you are regressing. Healing is not linear, and growth does not erase memory. But now, when those thoughts appear, you know how to sit with them without letting them run the show. You know how to observe without attaching. You know how to remind yourself that you are safe now. There is a calm confidence building in you that does not need validation. It does not announce itself. It simply exists. And people will feel it when they are around you. Some will be drawn to it. Some will be uncomfortable with it. That is not your concern. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be aligned. You're also beginning to see how everything you went through has given you a unique lens. You notice things others overlook. You hear what is not being said. You sense shifts before they happen. This awareness is not accidental. It is a byproduct. UCT of having to read rooms for safety, of having to anticipate change to survive. Now that skill is no longer used for defense, but for wisdom. The pace of your life is changing. You are no longer rushing to arrive. You understand that becoming is ongoing, and there is no prize for burning yourself out. You are choosing sustainability over speed, depth over appearance, truth over performance. You may find yourself releasing dreams that were built around proving something, not because you failed, but because you no longer need them. In their place, new desires are forming, quieter but more grounded. Desires rooted in fulfillment, not validation, in meaning, not comparison. There is a sense of internal safety settling in you, a knowing that even if things change, even if plans shift, even if uncertainty arises, you will not abandon yourself. That is the greatest security anyone can have. And it is something you built through every moment you thought you were alone, but kept going anyway. You are not the same person who entered the storm. And you were never meant to be. The storm refined you, stripped you of illusions, forced you to meet yourself without distractions. And now that you have done that, you are free to move forward without carrying the weight of who you had to be to survive. The future no longer feels like something you have to fight your way into. It feels like something you are being welcomed into. Step by step, moment by moment, with a steadiness that does not rush, and a confidence that does not waver, you continue forward, aware that what once felt endless has ended, and what lies ahead is not a repetition of pain, but an unfolding of everything you endured to become. Still moving, still breathing, still rising as the path continues to open in ways that reveal themselves only as you keep walking. And with each step you take, you begin to notice how your inner dialogue has softened. The voice that once criticized every move has learned to pause. The harshness that once felt like motivation has been replaced with understanding. You no longer speak to yourself the way the world once spoke to you. You have written that script, line by line, through patience and persistence. And now, when you face uncertainty, you don't collapse inward. You stand, you breathe, and you respond. You start to recognize how deeply you have changed when situations that once would have shaken you barely register. Delays don't feel like rejection anymore. Silence doesn't feel like abandonment. You understand now that not everything requires your emotional investment. Discernment has become second nature. You choose where your energy goes, and more importantly, where it does not. There's a growing sense of sovereignty within you. You no longer feel the need to be everywhere, to be everything, to be available to everyone. You understand that access to you is earned through consistency, respect, and alignment. This doesn't make you closed off. It makes you clear. And clarity attracts what confusion never could as life continues to unfold. You will notice that the right opportunities don't come with chaos attached. They don't require you to compromise your values or abandon your peace. They feel grounded, intentional, and steady. At first, this may feel almost too simple because you are used to things being complicated. But simplicity is not lack, it is refinement. You may also feel moments where you miss the intensity of who you used to be. Not because it was healthy, but because it was familiar. The adrenaline of constant struggle can masquerade as purpose when it's all you've known. But you are learning now that purpose does not have to hurt. It can feel calm. It can feel safe. It can feel like coming home to yourself. Your relationships begin to shift in quiet ways. Some deepen because they are rooted in mutual respect. Others fall away because they were only connected through shared pain or shared survival. You don't chase what leaves. You bless it and let it go. You understand now that alignment does not require force. You also start to see how your past pain has given you a rare level of compassion. You don't judge people quickly. You listen more than you speak. You understand that everyone is carrying something unseen, but you also understand that empathy does not require self-sacrifice. You can care without caring. You can support without absorbing. There is a sense of grounded optimism growing within you, not naive hope, but informed belief. You believe in yourself not because everything worked out easily, but because you adapted, learned, and endured. You trust your ability to navigate complexity without losing yourself. That trust is unshakable. You no longer feel the urge to rush your healing or your growth. You are not competing with anyone's timeline. You understand now that comparison was a distraction, not a motivator. Your path is specific. Your pace is intentional. And what is meant for you will not pass you by. As you continue forward, you may notice that your body responds differently to life. You breathe deeper, you sleep more peacefully. Your nervous system is learning that it no longer has to be on high alert. Safety is no longer theoretical. It is lived, and that sense of safety allows creativity, joy, and curiosity to reemerge. You begin to dream again, not from a place of escape, but from a place of expansion. Your dreams are not about proving anything. They are about expressing who you are. They feel aligned with your values, your capacity, and your truth. And even when those dreams evolve, you don't cling to old versions of them. You allow growth to reshape your vision. There's also a deeper level of accountability you now hold for yourself. You no longer blame the past for present choices. You honor it, but you don't hide behind it. You understand that healing is not about perfection. It is about responsibility with compassion. You are becoming one who can hold joy without waiting for it to be taken away. Someone who can celebrate without guilt. Someone who can rest without explaining why. These are not small shifts. They are monumental because they signal freedom at the core. You may still encounter people who try to pull you back into old dynamics. They may expect the version of you who overextended, overexplained, and overgave, but you will feel the difference immediately. Your body will signal it. Your intuition will whisper, and you will listen. You will choose yourself without drama, without justification, without apology. There is a quiet confidence in knowing that you no longer need external permission to live fully. You don't need approval to make changes. You don't need validation to trust your decisions. You are guided from within now, and that guidance is steady. As your life continues to stabilize, you will realize that stability does not mean stagnation. It means you finally have a solid base from which to explore. You can take risks without fear of collapse. You can try new things without losing yourself. You can grow without breaking. You are also learning how to forgive yourself for staying too long, for trusting too much, for not knowing what you know now. That forgiveness is essential because it releases shame, and shame was never meant to be your teacher. Experience was, and you learned. You will notice moments where gratitude rises naturally, not because you are forcing positivity, but because you can genuinely see the contrast between where you were and where you are. Gratitude at this level is not denial of pain. It is acknowledgement of growth. There is an inner alignment happening that makes decision-making easier. You no longer debate with yourself endlessly. You feel clarity more quickly. And even when you don't have all the answers, you trust your ability to find them. That trust changes everything. You are stepping into a phase of life where your presence alone is enough. You don't need to perform. You don't need to impress. You don't need to explain your worth. It is felt. And the right people, the right spaces, and the right opportunities will recognize it without you having to announce it. You may still have moments of solitude, but they no longer feel like abandonment. They feel like integration, like time given to you to align, to reflect, to recalibrate. Solitude becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. Your resilience has matured into wisdom. Your sensitivity has matured into intuition. Your endurance has matured into strength that knows when to rest. This evolution is subtle, but it is profound. As you continue forward, the life you are building begins to feel less like a reaction to what hurt you and more like a reflection of who you truly are. You are no longer driven by fear of repeating the past. You are guided by vision of what is possible now. And even when uncertainty appears, as it inevitably will, you meet it differently. You don't spiral. You don't freeze. You stay present. You remind yourself that you have already survived the worst, and this moment does not require that level of defense. The sense of completion you feel is not an ending. It is a threshold, a crossing into a new way of being. a release from cycles that demanded suffering as proof of worth. You are no longer auditioning for peace. You are living in it. You continue to walk forward, not because everything is perfect, but because you are whole. And wholeness changes the way you experience everything. It allows you to move through life with openness instead of armor, with curiosity instead of fear, with trust instead of tension, as the journey keeps unfolding, breath by breath, step by step, revealing more of what this new chapter holds as you remain present within it, still moving, still becoming, still aligned with the path that no longer asks you to. Suffer to belong, but invites you to exist fully as you are, right here, right now, continuing onward. So let this be the moment you stop looking back to measure your progress and start looking inward to recognize your arrival. Not because everything outside of you is finished, but because something essential inside of you is complete. The fight that shaped you has released you. The pain that taught you has loosened its grip. You are no longer defined by what you endured, but by what you carry forward with wisdom, clarity, and peace. From here on, you move without chains, without fear rehearsing old stories, without needing to suffer to prove your strength. You walk knowing that what tried to break you instead built you, what delayed you refined you, and what ended has made space for a life that finally meets you where you stand, steady, whole, and ready to receive what comes next.